Oh, hey everybody. Hey everybody. It's me, Dan, here from the not too distant future after a crazy interview with Robert Venditti. Man, I'd like to tell you how it happened, but it hasn't happened yet, or something like that. So check out these opening credits, help me pay the bills. And hey, if you haven't, consider clicking on that subscribe button down there. Consider clicking, thumbs up if you like this video. Maybe you click thumbs down if you didn't. And watch the opening credits, then watch a little preview of Tankers by Robert Venditti from Bad Idea, and we'll see you in the not too distant future. Oh, hello world. Welcome to Comic Book News. I'm your old pal, Dan Shaheen. Oh gosh, today we're going to talk to, an old pal of mine. Guy I haven't talked to in maybe over 20 years, or no, close to 20 years. We're going to talk to Robert Venditti. He's a guy, he's that rarest of guys who's like worked in so many different strata of the industries. He's worked for publishers. He's worked for distributors. He's been a writer of indie comics. Those indie comics did that rarest of rare things by being made into blockbuster Hollywood spectacular right out of the gate. The guy's first comic ever published, became a Bruce Willis vehicle. And let me say, it went right to his head. You could not meet a more, I call him Mr. Hollywood Venditti. Just kidding. Nothing could be further from the truth. This guy is so cool. Dude, his movie went Hollywood. It went to the box office. He kept working at Cold Cut Comics distribution. All right. I was just talking to him backstage, and he's as cool and grounded and as down to earth as ever, despite the fact that he's now living his dream of writing comics. I remember back then I would go hey dude, why aren't you in Hollywood pursuing the next screenplay? He's like, cause I want to write comics. That's all I ever really wanted to do. That's what I want to do. And boy, did he, man. So going from top shelf, going to that next tier, working for Valiant, working on books like XO Man of War and whatever else they're publishing over there that's worth reading. And then going on to DC, starting at Freedom Fighters, kind of nobody characters that, got a really great reception, started earning him a reputation as a great writer at DC. He went on to write my favorite book of 2018/19, which was his collaboration with Bryan Hitch on Hawkman. I think it was amazing. I think it was some of the best Hawkman ever, some of the best Hitch ever, and some of the best Venditti Hitch. And hopefully there's going to be more of that stuff in the not too distant future. And now he's on to Bad Ideas, right? Well, no, he's got good ideas, but he's going to publish them through Bad Idea Comics, a new venture by some of his ex-cohorts at Valiant. This comic's not out yet. There's only one Bad Idea comic out. It's hard to find because Bad Idea, they got an interesting and different publishing plan. We'll talk to Robert about that and some other stuff. Before I bring him in, I'm going to play a little video trailer teaser clip thing of Tankers so you can get an idea of what we're talking about, and we'll bring in the man himself. So let's hear from him right now, Robert Venditti on Tankers.
Hi, I'm Robert Venditti, professional comic book writer, and I want you to know about the new Bad Idea comic book series, Tankers. As the world well knows, I'm what's called a method writer. That means before I begin a project, I don't just study the material, So to take a deep dive into the subject, I came to the one place on Earth where I can operate mechanized combat equipment, dig for oil, and shoot dinosaurs. Texas tea, baby! I'm down to the tank! No oil yet? Every second of my immersive research experience guarantees that Tankers is unlike anything you've read from me before. I should know. I've read everything I've ever written. Tankers is about a crack team of mercenaries and mech suits who work for Greenleaf Oil. They get sent back in time to divert the comet to kill the dinosaurs. More dinosaurs in the past means more oil in the present. Who doesn't love that? And with a superstar art team providing breathtaking covers and interiors, Tankers is an action-fueled thrill ride of human versus dinosaur warfare that we can't wait for you to read. So go ahead, order Tankers today. I guarantee I'll be glad you did. As for me, I'll be finishing off these dinosaurs. Extinction Day! Extinction Day. Outstanding, you know?
Oh, man. Robert Venditti, welcome to Comic Book News.
Thanks for having me on, Dan. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, thanks for making the time. I've got a copy. We'll be looking at Tankers #1 today, and it's a really amazing looking book and really interesting looking stuff. But I sort of wanted to take people back to like the beginning of the Robert Venditti story. Why don't you tell us where that started?
Yeah, sure. So, oh boy, I always wanted to be a writer, you know, sort of my elementary school ambition. You know, I followed that all the way through high school, college, all those kinds of things. But you don't really know how to do it. You know, I mean, it's not like you apply for a job as a fiction writer, a comic book writer, whatever have you. So my way to kind of get into the industry was to start working at a company called Top Shelf Productions, which was a small press publisher, but also a distribution outlet. So they worked a lot with cold cut distribution with Last Gas, but they also did direct order fulfilling with retailers, which is how I met you. And they also work conventions and, you know, bookstores, things like that. Top Shelf is a very big thing now. You know, they published March, which won the National Book Award. They did blankets. They've done, you know, Jeff Lemire, his first books, Matt Kent's first books, Nate Powell's first books, Craig Thompson's first books. Back when I joined Top Shelf, which was in 2002, it predated all that. I was the first employee that the company ever hired. And because it was a small company, it was just the two owners and me, everybody kind of did everything, you know. So my primary function was to work in the warehouse, do contact with retailers, mail stuff out and things like that. But I also did a little bit of editorial, kind of whatever needed to be done. And so I started writing comics while I was working there. And I gave my script for my first comic book, which was called The Surrogates, to Chris Staros, who was the editor at Top Shelf. And I was like, man, this isn't what you guys normally do. You guys do like a lot of autobio comics, like black and white stuff, you know. It's just like sci-fi, cyberpunk. But if you read it and you think it's all right, you know, maybe you can introduce me to somebody at Dark Horse or, you know, Vertigo or whatever. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. But he ended up reading it and he ended up liking it. And they decided to publish it themselves. That ended up being my first book. And through a whole strange confluence of events, ended up getting adapted into a Bruce Willis film. And that was really kind of what allowed me to get kind of a foot in the door, because all I really wanted surrogates to be was a resume piece, something that I could give to other editors and say, here's how I write, maybe I can work for you. You can hire me to do something else. I didn't expect for all that other stuff to happen, but once it did, it allowed me to, sort of have an entry into talking with other editors and all
And
that.
I mean, what a resume piece to have, Bruce Willis. Did you get to meet Bruce? Did you get to go on the set? Did you get to see?
I call him Bruce. You call him Mr. Willis. Yes,
Of course.
I did.
Sorry,
I did
Mr. Hollywood.
Yeah, I did. I did get to meet him. He was a nice guy. I mean, we didn't, hang out or have beers or anything. I visited the set a couple times, and I met him on the set, which was awesome. I mean, I was such a novice to all of this. Like when I went to the set, I didn't know that they didn't film movies in the order that you watched it. You know what I mean? Which, obviously they don't. But at the time, I had no idea. So it was all just new stuff for me to learn and pick up on. And so, yeah, I met him. But the most interesting thing about, to me, the making of the movie and the set visits and things like that was all the tradespeople, the set builders and the prop people. I worked in a lot of restaurants growing up, and there was a catering van that was there that was basically like a renovated RV that had like 2 stoves in it and fryers and whatever. And they cooked like high quality, like wedding reception food for lunch and dinner. I mean, for breakfast and lunch and sometimes dinner every single day for like 200 people or whatever. And I was fascinated by that. And I asked them, like, can I just come in the RV and just watch you guys work for a little while? And they were like, what do you want to come in here for? But it's just amazing to me, sort of all the machinery.
That's weird, Robert. I'm gonna say it. It's weird.
I mean, I always worked in restaurants, and so it was just like 3 people. And I mean, you'd be like, can I have a glass of orange juice? They were like, sure. And they would like grind you a fresh glass of orange juice. Like, for that small of a crew to do that level of work at that quality day in and day out is impossible, So those were the things that I really enjoyed about the set, was talking with sort of all the trade people, the blue collar people and things like that. Because I had no idea the machinery that went in to make a big budget film.
Right. Well, you got lucky to come in on the ground floor of like a Bruce Willis vehicle, right? It wasn't a Roger Corman Golden Globus thing or whatever, where you're lucky for some Ritz crackers in the corner.
Yeah.
So.
I always say there's nowhere to go but down, right? I mean, but that's all right. I got my one. You know what I'm saying? So I'm all right with it.
So of course you immediately quit your job, packed up your things, moved to LA, got an agent, right?
I did, yeah, absolutely. All those things. No, I did none of those things. People always ask me, especially back then, now that you've had the surrogates made, do you think it'll be easier for you to get your next movie made? And I always say, having been through the process, I actually think it's never going to happen ever again, because there's such an impossible random set of events that have to all congeal in order for you to get a film made. And just to kind of give you, sort of the biggest example of that, a lot of what happened with the surrogates was they turned in the screenplay for it just through timing about a week before the big Hollywood strike, the Writers Guild strike that shut down Hollywood in whatever year it was. It was like 2007 maybe. And so Bruce Willis was supposed to go do a film with Oliver Stone called Pinkville about the My Lai massacre, but the writer's strike happened, and so that put that film on hold. And so Bruce Willis had no film. The Surrogate screenplay was done, was ready to go. He likes sci-fi, so now he's going to be in Surrogates, and now Surrogates gets made. So people are like, what do I do to get my movie made? And I'm like, make sure there's a writer's strike. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can't control any of it. It's going to happen or it's not, And so I didn't ever want to just jump in and be like, I'm a Hollywood writer now. I went to the premiere of The Surrogates with my wife. I think it was on a Thursday or a Friday. But the following Monday, I was back in Top Shelf's warehouse packing boxes and sending them out. Because if you remember, Top Shelf used to do those sales every September, right?
Yeah.
When we would like do $3 books and whatever, and they were monster sales. We'd get like 1,000 orders in like 4 days or whatever, right? And so we were running that sale right during that time. And I had to go home and start packing the orders and sending them out. And I actually had friends who own a shop in Silver Lake, Los Angeles area. I don't know if you know them, but it's called Secret Headquarters.
Secret Headquarters, Dave and Dave, right?
Yeah, so I went to high school with those guys.
Oh, okay. They're awesome.
Yeah, I went and visited their store because I live in Atlanta. I went and visited their store when I was out there for the premiere, and I had shipped him an order. And while I was standing in his store, the UPS driver came and delivered it. And I took like a photo of me with the boxes because it's the only time I've ever seen the box go from birth to death. You know,
that's pretty cool.
All the way across the country, you know?
Yeah. Well, and then they couldn't make that My Lai Massacre movie. So, and you said, wait a minute, how can I make a sci-fi version of a My Lai Massacre movie where I can have people Tankers is one of the most brutal books I've ever seen towards dinosaurs. If you're a reptile lover, you don't want, this book is not one you want to look at, man.
Yeah, many dinosaurs were harmed in the making of that comic book. And as you can see from your opening video reel, it was a thoroughly researched project. You know, I really inhabited the material in order to be able to execute the story, you know.
I can tell.
Yeah. But Tankers is it's just big and it's fun. You know, the high concept of the story is that the oil companies have invented time travel for the sole purpose of sending these mercenaries back in time so they can divert the comet that killed the dinosaurs. So dinosaurs will continue to live and breed until the comet comes back again, and there'll be more dead dinosaurs, which means more oil, and our oil reserves won't run out, right? At no point in the story do any of the characters think for even a second that that's the most absurd thing that they've ever heard of.
Right.
Everybody's all in. Like, they're dead serious. You know, they're gung-ho. They're ready to save the future of humanity to make sure we have oil. And it was a chance for me to do a story that was very satirical and very absurdist, which I've not really ever had an opportunity to write before, you know. And working with Bad Idea and Warren Simons and Dinesh and Hunter and Josh and Adam and all the people that I worked with when I was over at Valiant, it's really a place where, you know, they're doing these limited series. You know, it's all about story, and they're putting everything they have into the production values. And Juan Jose Reap is on art, and if anybody knows him,
it's amazing,
highly detailed, and he does violence and gore really well. But I don't want to say that in a way that puts anybody off, because, and I know it's going to sound strange, when he does violence and gore, it's not like mean-spirited, you know, like there's kind of a heart and a charm to it. And
well, we're going to look at this because we've got the entire first issue in color and a lot of the second issue in black and white. So we're going to take a look at that.
Oh, all right. You might have seen some stuff I haven't seen yet. So that sounds awesome.
Oh, I hope so. We'll take a look. We don't have any paper copies because they don't exist yet. We'll take a look.
It's not at the printer yet, and we've got some color tweaks that we're still doing. So people are going to see a version of the book that probably nobody will ever see. So awesome. It's a exclusive just for you.
Killer. Well, we're going to get there. We're going to come back to that. First, let's keep going through the career. So Chris Staros, obviously, like, he is the guy. Who else? Like, you got to really give a lot of thanks to that guy for taking a chance on you. When I was looking at this book, your original book, I was like, Surrogates, that came out from, like, it had to be Dark Horse, right? It had to be. It couldn't have been. I would never have guessed Top Shelf.
Yeah. Everything that went with it was great, and I wouldn't go back and do anything differently, obviously. But Surrogates, when that book came out, it was like the Top Shelf fans didn't really know what to do with it because it was too mainstream and it didn't appeal to them. And the mainstream fans had no idea how to find it because it was at Top Shelf. So it, like, alienated everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it didn't sell that well. But, you know, after the movie came out and everything, it obviously did fine. Yeah, so
we got a couple people watching, and by the way, guys, we're gonna have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of this thing.
Oh, cool.
So save your questions for Robert Venditti. Then feel free to chat it up here. We got famous YouTuber Nerdette watching. We got Ryan Clater, guest and cartoonist and comics educator and pinball expert and so many other things. But one question: where can I pre-order the book? That's worth asking. So, like, how do people get Bad Idea? What's Bad Idea? They should look in Diamond Previews, right? That's where you comics, right? So let me just previews. What's the previews?
Things have changed a little bit since you've been out of the game, Dan. So,
okay.
Bad Idea has taken a bit of a experimental approach. So what Bad Idea is doing is they're available in, I want to say the number is 254, but I'm not positive on that number. 254 direct market retailers around the country. Their books aren't digital. They're not in bookstores. You can't get them anywhere except for these 254 stores, mostly in America, but some around the world as well, that have signed up to become Bad Idea destination stores. There's a whole slew of things that those stores have to do in order to become Bad Idea destination stores. So if you go to their website, which I think is just Bad Idea Corp, I believe, but there's also whereisbadidea.com. You can look it up and you can find out where those stores are. They're pretty, distributed around the country, depending on what state you live in. If you're in California, there's a ton of them, in Georgia, there's only one. Everybody say hi to my dog, Ginger.
Hey, Ginger.
Named after the giant robot from the Armor Hunter story I did at Valiant. So somebody's coming home from school probably, and the dog's going crazy. But
which is a great segue into Valiant, because there's a Valiant connect.
Right quick. So you can look up the Bad Idea destination stores, or you can go to some of them like Midtown and some of the others that do mail order, and you can get the books that way. So
okay, because really Bad Idea. I mean, some of the founders came from Valiant, where you worked. So you must have worked with who? Tell me about the founders of Valiant.
Yeah. So back to Surrogates in a weird way. I wrote Surrogates. It came out in 2005. And I took a trip to go to MoCA. Did you ever go to the Museum of Comic and Cartoon Art Festival in New York City? It was kind of like the Ape of the East Coast. Yeah. I'm sure you've been to Ape. Yeah.
I went to Ape every year.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that. It was in Manhattan. And I went up there to do MoCA, which means I drove all the books in a passenger van from Atlanta to New York to set up the booth and do all those things. And then I went and did a visit at the Marvel offices. And I'd worked with a guy named John Barber, who's now an editor at IDW, on one story that it's like I only ever did two very small things for Marvel. It was like an 8-page Captain America story in a book called Marvel Comics Presents. And I did that story with John Barber. So I went to the Marvel offices. I met with him, and he was in like a little cubicle that he shared with a couple of other editors. And one of them was a guy named Warren Simons. And I brought copies of the Surrogates trade and gave them to those editors. So now fast forward to 2012, I guess it was around 2011, Warren is now going to be the editor-in-chief of Valiant when it launches, as they reopen the company. And he's looking for writers. He'd never read Surrogates, but it was sitting on his bookshelf, and he pulled it off and he read it. And he's like, I really like this. And he called me and asked me to pitch on some of their more sci-fi oriented characters. Bloodshot was actually the character that he wanted me to do. But reading their sort of character synopses, because I didn't grow up reading comics. I read my first comic book was in my mid-20s. So I never even heard of Valiant. And when Warren called me on the phone, I was like, man, that's awesome. I appreciate you reaching out, but I just want to be honest with you. Not only have I never heard of any of those characters you just mentioned, I've never heard of Valiant. I have no idea what that is, Right. And he was like, cool, that's exactly what we want. And so he sent me like a bunch of character Bibles, and X-Men of War was the one that really appealed to me. Just because it's such a crazy mashup. Like, I mean, it's it's science fiction, but it's also like an ancient Visigoth. But
I love that.
Day. Like,
I was a Valiant fan. I was reading Valiant off the stands, and most of their books were Gold Key reboots.
Yeah.
Except for that one.
Yeah,
and that was the one that stuck. It had the most interesting concept of Conan-ish Iron Man. I could see why you would gravitate towards that one.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do something different with every project I take on. And when I saw the concept for X-Men of War, I was like, that's as different as it gets. I'm never going to come across another thing like that. You know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, not to mention early design work by, I think, like Bart Sears and Barry Windsor Smith and other people, too, that worked on the early books of that.
Yeah. And
Jim
so,
Shooter too had his fingers in that and his his DNA in that
yeah,
as well.
Jim Shooter. Yep. So for me, I liked XO. I pitched on XO, and that ended up being the first monthly comic book that I ever did. And I did it for 57 issues, I believe, which by the time I was done was the longest run anybody had ever done on any character ever at Valiant, you know. And so I really got to know Warren and Dinesh. Hey, I know Mike Coonrad. I got to know Warren and Dinesh and Hunter and Josh Johns and Adam Freeman, who you know, and there was another editor who started at Valiant just after I left, named Carl Bollers. So I didn't have a chance to meet him, but that whole group of people are the group of people that are now starting up Bad Idea. So
right, okay, and so obviously your books were popular, and I've heard you're one of the few people I've heard talked about as like a writer from Valiant. There were others that came out of there, but you were one of the guys that people identified as like, wow, really writing killer stories, and that led to your um, uh, getting approached by DC Comics. How did it work? I mean, you must have sold some books at the invisible hand of the market, right?
Yeah, so it's super weird.
Started
Like,
to speak.
yeah, so it's weird. I had actually everything that Valiant was doing was super hush hush, right? Like it was all, we're going to launch in May of 2012, and I had started working on XO. Probably around October, I got my pitch approved, and I found out Kerry Nord was going to be the artist, and that just blew my mind because I had read Kerry Nord's Conan run with Kurt Busiek, and I'm a Kurt Busiek fan, and it was just gorgeous. Fantastic. And so, yeah. So, I mean, this is my first monthly comic book, right? And Kerry Nord's going to draw it. I mean, that's crazy. And so I wasn't telling anybody what I was doing. But like in November of that year, DC reached out to me and asked me to pitch on a couple of concepts for them. So I was already talking to DC before Exo Man of War had come out. But when Exo Man of War came out, it definitely was. I started to get, more calls and things like that. I mean, Exo Man of War #1, like within a week, I had some calls. And the first project I ended up doing for DC was a series called Demon Knights. That Paul Cornell had launched, but he was leaving the book, and so they wanted me to come and write like a 4-issue story just to end the series. They ended up liking my 4-issue story, so they extended by another 4, so I ended up doing 8 total. And then from Demon Knights, Jeff Johns was leaving Green Lantern, and they asked me to pitch on Green Lantern, and so I took the Green Lantern job, which was crazy. And I knew in a sense I wasn't ready for that gig. You know what I'm saying? Like by the time I started writing Green Lantern, I'd written maybe 6 comic books in my life that were like serialized because XO was new and Demon Knights I'd only done a few issues, I knew it was high risk, but for me, I didn't ever want to be the person to look back and be like, what if I'd taken that job, So I did it. And, my early Green Lantern stuff, I got beat up a ton about it. People really didn't like it. And I know there were a lot of things about it that weren't great. A lot of, writing in a shared universe is exceptionally hard. Yeah. And you're following a run like Jeff Johns. There was definitely a learning curve there. Now, by the time I finished writing Green Lantern, it was like 87 issues. And I'm enormously proud of everything I did with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, which was like the last 51 issues of that, because by that time I'd had a lot more experience under my belt, and I love those stories. I think if you read my entire Green Lantern run from New 52, issue number 21, all the way to the end of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern Corps, you can kind of see the development of me as a writer,
Well, I think DC loved it too, because to this day on the DC website, it says Robert Venditti writes Green Lantern. That's all it says on the DC website.
I don't know when the last time is they've updated that. Yeah. Because I wrote.
Well, they don't have attentive hype men like Adam Freeman, and as a matter of fact, they might have had some. I think the guy or gal that updates their website, they might have just 86'd in the past couple of months. You got any knowledge or anything to say about the shakeup going on at DC?
No, I don't. I mean,
does it feel different working for them now than it did before?
I don't really feel it, but I mean, I'm not in the walls of the building, right? I mean, nobody's in the walls of the building because of COVID and everything, but I don't really feel it because all the editors that I worked with, except for maybe 2, are still there, and the editor I'm working with on Superman 78 is an editor that I've worked with for years and years and years. So I don't really feel the sense of it. 2020 was such a difficult year on so many levels, but it seems like particularly, there's everything that we were going through as a nation, with COVID or whatever, right? Then there were the things that were happening specifically in California, right? Wildfires and civil unrest and things like that, which there was civil unrest in other places as well. But LA really experienced a lot of, like, there were wildfires blowing smoke in, and there was a lot of civil unrest there and all those kinds of things. And then within the walls of DC, there was even all these other things happening, with, the staff, people being let go and all these things. And, I just feel so bad for the people that work there. Like, a lot has been asked of them in the last 12 months, what they've had to go through. And they're all great people. And there's a lot of people.
They're not all. They can't all be great people, but that's okay. I'm sure there's a couple.
All the ones that I knew. Let's say that all the ones that I knew were great. And starting out the way I did at Top Shelf, working in the warehouse, I didn't just get to know the editors. Like, I really spent a lot of time at conventions, hanging out with staff.
Yeah.
Go to the office and hang out with people in other departments, because that's kind of my roots. Like, my roots aren't selling comics over the table at Ape or whatever, right? My roots are packing boxes in a warehouse. Yep. And so a lot of those people, those behind the scenes staff, got let go, and I had great relationships with a lot of them, and it's really hard to see, but what can you do? It's just a tough time in the world right now. And
agreed.
Yeah.
Well, and now you worked on those books, and then suddenly they handed you an assignment that is like, it's like I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. They said, hey, we got this character. A couple people have tried him before. How do you feel about Hawkman, Robert? What do you think? How about a fresh new take on Hawkman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now then I could see them having to go. If it was me, I would go like, I don't know, man, that's really difficult. But then they go, oh, and we got this guy you might have heard of who wants to do the art, named Bryan Hitch. So tell us, how did Hawkman with Bryan Hitch and Robert Venditti come out? Because that was the best DC comic of 2019, I want to say. That was my favorite.
Or the 2000s, if you just want to say the 2000s, that's fine too. You know what I mean? Yeah. No,
let's not go nuts. No, but it was up there, man. Because anything by Bryan Hitch is going to be one of the best comics out there, right? Talk about this.
Hitch is amazing. Beyond just being an artist, he's an amazing collaborator. He has such great story ideas of his own. One of the best times I ever had working on a book was working with him on Hawkman. But I didn't know he was going to be the artist when they asked me about it. So for me, again, going back to me not knowing anything about comics, didn't grow up reading them, when they asked me to pitch on Hawkman, I was like, I know his visual because I think I saw it in like a cartoon like the 70s or 80s or something. So I know he flies, but it's literally the only thing I know about Hawkman. And they were like, cool, tell us what you got. So that first night, I just went to Wikipedia to start reading about Hawkman, which is kind of what I do with every character. And the interesting thing about Hawkman is he's got 3 Wikipedia entries because he's so confusing. It's not even all under one umbrella. You know what I mean? But as I was reading it, I was like, oh, I get it. This ancient Egyptian guy, he reincarnates, but he reincarnates across time and space. So this Thanagarian version is really the same guy. He just reincarnated and it's all the same thing. And as I went reading all the Hawkman comics, I saw that they never actually did that in the comics. And I said, well, I guess that's my story then. And I thought that would be a way to kind of unite what was generally regarded at this time as the most confusing continuity in all of comics, not just DC, but everywhere, I've had a few people ask me to write Donna Troy since I started doing Hawkman, because I guess she's supposed to be super confusing too. But again, I don't know the first thing about her, so I can't say how. But
well, if they'll get George Perez to come out of retirement to draw it or something.
Yeah, that'll work. So my idea was to make Hawkman a character who reincarnates across time and space. All the versions we'd seen of him in the past are all the same guy. He just never knew it until now. And my story was about him discovering these things about himself and creating a new mythology for him. There was a new sort of origin that would encompass all these things, and that was what I pitched to DC.
So you did one of my favorite things. So when retconning happens, people complain they don't like it. I only don't like it when the writer of the retcon disregards what came before
Right.
and does not address it or doesn't or says like that was not canon. This is you took it all as canon and tried to weave it all together.
Yeah. So one of the best, and I apologize for keep moving in and out like this.
No problem.
Dog who keeps coming and going through my little door right here. But
no worries.
So one of my best days in my career was the day that Hawkman #1 came out. And now Bryan, when he sort of read what I had just told you, that concept, he loved it and he wanted to be a part of the book. And I was, so thrilled about that. But he immediately got it in ways that I didn't even get it, because Bryan is somebody who did grow up reading DC Comics. He's extremely familiar with the entire universe and all these vast characters. You know what I'm saying? So he immediately had all these ideas too of like things that we can go and where we can go and things like that. But we're putting it all on the table because what you said, whenever you mess with continuity, a lot of times people don't like it, And so we put it all into this first issue. And the first issue, he learns that he reincarnates across time and space, and all the Hawkmen are the same guy. And before that issue hits stands, I'm nervous, right? Because I just went through this with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, where I had Guy and Kyle and John and Hal all in one book. And, the Kyle fans hate Hal, and the Hal fans hate John and Kyle, and everybody hates Guy. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, I didn't want that. I just wanted all the fans to just like Hawkman. I didn't want to throw away one for another or whatever. I wanted to make them all count and be like, if you read the Silver Age stuff and it was Katar Hol from Thanagar, this is your Hawkman. If you're a fan of the Golden Age stuff or the stuff that came along in the Jeff Johns run in the early 2000s, and you like, Prince Khufu, the ancient Egyptian, this is your Hawkman. It's all your Hawkman. Plus all these Hawkmen that you never knew existed, like one from Krypton and one from Ray.
Yeah, so great.
One from the Microverse, one that was a new god, like all these other things, right? So that first day when that first issue came out, all the reviews and like fan response started coming in, and this is so rare. You ran a shop. It was almost uniformly, I can't believe that Robert Venditti and Bryan Hitch fixed Hawkman in like 2 pages.
Yeah.
Because it was 1 2-page spread of all these past lives. And he says, I don't just reincarnate across time, I reincarnate across time and space. And he never knew it until then. And everybody's just like, I can't believe that they did that. With this character that people have been trying to make sense of since the Silver Age reboot, going on 60 years, It
was wonderful.
And that's a day I'll always remember,
Okay, so I said this at the time. I said, I read Hawkman. I came for the Hitch, but I stayed for the Venditti for sure because I loved it. You had me at that first issue. It was one of those rare things. I feel like you knew you don't have 6 issues. You don't have a full trade to get somebody's attention on a new comic these days.
Not
you
on
really
Hawkman. Not on Hawkman.
Not for Hawkman,
like
right?
They might do it for Batman, but on Hawkman, you better get there in the first issue, or they're not going to pick up issue 2. But Hitch, I mean, obviously he's an artist, but to just say that he's an artist, he's so much more than that,
Well, wait a minute. I want to address one more thing about Hitch, too, because so he had a reputation from the Ultimates as a guy who was sometimes late.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was a single late issue of Hawkman.
No. Yeah.
I started following him on Twitter, and this is a guy with a work ethic of delivering comics that like a renewed passion in the guy. Like he has all the accolades of the top guy. He doesn't have to work as hard as he worked on a book like Hawkman.
Yeah.
I feel like he was trying to prove maybe that he could do a monthly and deliver on time or something. I don't know. Yeah. There was a story I built in my head about that.
I can't really say. I mean, yes, every issue shipped on time, except, of course, during the COVID shutdowns, right? But actually, in my entire career of over 300 comics, I think there's only one time that I ever had a book shipped late, and it was late by 1 week because I believe an artist took ill or something. Other than that, every single issue of anything I've ever written has always been on time. Every single time.
Well, you can't take credit for that. Like you going in on a project with Hitch, though, there had to be, I don't know, maybe it wasn't in your mind, but for me, I was like, oh, this is going to be great for a few months, and then I'm going to wait 6 months, and then
I think you're right about Hitch, and I'll get to that in 1 second. But as far as my whole career, I think I do get to take credit to that to some extent.
Okay.
Not all of it, but some of it, because as a writer, I'm by far from being the most important part of a comic book, but I am the beginning of the train.
True.
And until I've done my job, the artist can't pencil, the inker can't ink, the colorist can't color, and the letterer can't letter. So I've been very conscious throughout my entire career. I never want to mess with somebody's paycheck, right?
Yes.
So if I overbook myself and all of a sudden I'm blowing deadlines on scripts and I'm late,
yeah,
I can do that, but my artist is not going to have time to finish the book. The book may ship late, or even worse, they'll split my book up between two artists. And my artist who thought he was going to draw 20 pages that month is now only going to draw 15. He's never going to get those 5 pages.
That's
back.
right.
I just gave him a pay cut. You know what I mean?
I get it.
So on every book I've ever been on, I'm 4 months out on scripts.
Yeah.
My editors don't even give me schedules because I'm ahead so far. It's never a thing. And with Hal joining the Green Lantern Corps, which was a double ship book, I'm the only writer of the entire Rebirth era who wrote their entire run, every single page, double ship for the entire time. 51 issues in a row, every 2 weeks, every single one shipped on time. I wrote every page. That's because I was done 3 months before somebody even needed to draw it. And I could write number 4, and then I could write number 7, and then I could write number 11, and then I could write number 5, and I could have 3 artists all going at the same time because I was so far out ahead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now when it comes to Hitch, I don't know about what happened with the Ultimates. That's kind of before my time reading comics, and certainly before my time reading Marvel comics. But what I can tell you is on Hawkman, he was on the book for 12 issues. He drew every page of all 12 issues. He inked more than half of all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and every single thing was on time. And he could have kept going. Like DC wanted to rotate him off and put on other projects, but he could have kept going. He drew the issue. There's an issue where Hawkman goes into the microverse and he meets the Atom, and they sort of rekindle their friendship.
Yes.
But in the microverse, the Atom can sort of reverse shrink.
Yes.
Just a little and be a giant, right?
Yes.
So that whole issue with Hawkman and the Atom, Giant Atom and Little Hawkman, which is an inverse of the Silver Age Giant Hawkman, Little Atom, right? Hitch drew that entire issue and inked that entire issue in 3 weeks.
Can I say that was my favorite issue, and that moment was my favorite moment of the entire series when the Atom unshrank to grow.
It's one of my favorites too. And all I can say is that's just writer and artist, and they're like feeling it. You know what I mean? Like by that point, like I've been working with Hitch and we're getting along really good, and he can draw anything and draw it really well. And he's not phoning in any of this art. Like he's doing spreads with like 100 characters on them, or like when he's in Egypt, he's drawing hieroglyphs on all the little things, and you can see what they are because he used to work in the Egyptian exhibit at the British Museum, and so he actually knows hieroglyphs. You know what I mean? So like he's doing enormous amounts of detail. Every issue was a different world with a different setting, a different architecture. We're on Thanagar. We're on Dinosaur Island fighting a T-Rex. You know, we're in ancient Egypt. We're in the microverse. Every issue, Krypton. He's drawing all these things every single month, month in, month out. No deadline pressure. Every book on time. Inking a lot of it too. So
amazing.
Yeah, for me,
I'm in touch with Hitch to try and get him on this show. We've been going back and forth trying to coordinate a time.
Yeah.
But I don't want to bother him because I go like, you're putting out the best work of your career when you don't have to. It feels like he's going after, like, he's like, okay, I know I'm a top like guy. You look at my stuff, it's beautiful, I know the action is flawless, impeccable, everything drawn right, but I want to show that I can deliver like a cartoonist, like a Jack Kirby can deliver, or like a, like a pro, Neil Adams, old school guys.
Yeah, all I can say is that he was never, and I don't know what prior situations were, but with me, he never waited on a script once. Like, he'd be drawing issue 1, and I already have issue 2 locked, and issue 3 is with the editor waiting for me to get notes. So, like, before he finished issue 1, he had issue 2 and could read it and like that. So he was never waiting on me for story. There was never a time when there was a week that got eaten up because I was out of town or whatever, because I can go on vacation and I'm still 2 months ahead on my scripts and everybody can keep working behind me. You know what I'm trying to say? And I guess maybe that's why I don't do, a lot of writers can have more of an output than I do on a monthly basis, but I'm very careful about, I don't ever want to chase the money on my end, and that comes at the expense of somebody else's money. You know what I mean?
Which is awesome. And I didn't mean to say, like, what I can say is you're never going to be the blame for something being late because you're ahead, but like you can't help working with an artist who might not be able to deliver. But like you said, they'll pull in a fill-in artist.
And that's unfortunate, right? Because I don't know the percentages, but I would venture to say that a lot of times when a book is late, it's because the writer didn't turn in the script on time.
Could be. It could be.
I mean? And everything grinds to a halt until that writer does what they're supposed to do. So it's unfortunate that artists kind of get hung with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking about Hitch specifically. I'm just saying in general. It's unfortunate that artists kind of get hung with that, and it's all on them. When it could just as easily be the artist who was late. True. And boy, do I feel terrible for colorists, because when that happens and the book is late, the colorist ends up having to color, 22 pages in 48 hours or whatever, month in and month out. And it just must be maddening to sit there for 28 days with nothing to do. And then all of a sudden you got to do all of it in 2 days or whatever,
And not to turn this into the Bryan Hitch show or anything, but like, did you read Batman's Grave?
Yeah, I read Batman's Grave. Yeah.
Because I look at that and I go, like, who draws a fight scene like in immaculate detail with background in a fully rendered room, and like there's continuity to everything. There's no shortcuts being taken.
His storytelling is flawless.
It's amazing.
It's a huge component of our Hawkman book too, right? Because Hawkman as a character is so confusing. So the storytelling, I felt, from the writing part and the art part, I don't know if it would have worked as well if it wasn't so flawless. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like the visual storytelling was so flawless that the reader, you could read that book with no dialogue. You know what I mean? And so that takes a hurdle away from the reader.
Okay, let's
with a character that traditionally is like all hurdles. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Speaking of flawless storytelling, let's take a look at Tankers #1, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think? Okay, so this is the cover. A bad idea. You know what the cover price is going to be on this bad boy? $3.99, I think, right?
$5.99, I believe. That is a 32-page Tanker story with an 8-page backup story, also by me. So it's 40 pages of content for $5.99.
It's like a prestige format, perfect bound type.
I don't think it's going to be a perfect bound. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. That literally is the first time I've seen the cover logo. I don't even know if that's actually the cover logo. I have no idea.
Okay, well, this is the comic book news exclusive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are asking what's going on with my hand, and I'm not really sure.
You're like in and out of a green screen or something. Yeah.
No, I think it might have something to do with a time dilation effect from that. You saw me from the future who had no arm at the beginning.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm a little worried. Anyway, let's look at Tankers, and we'll figure out what's going on as we go through the show. Okay. Talk about Juan Jose Rip.
Yeah. Hyper detailed artist. It's insane how fast he is. He does a monthly book standing on his head, no problem. And you're going to see as we get through these pages how detailed they are. I mean, he's drawing like the leaves on the trees and, the scales of the dinosaurs and all the little things. And he also, I got some of his originals. I worked with him on Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. He draws at a size that's like sort of an 8x10 sheet of paper. He does not draw on like a huge board and then shrink it down, which is what a lot of high detail artists do. He draws on smaller than a normal comic book board.
That's very surprising. Yeah. That surprises me a lot.
Yeah. But yeah,
so when I read this, when I started reading this, I said, this is high concept. It's camp. This is Ray Bradbury's A Sound of Thunder meets Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers. And I know he didn't write I know that was Heinlein who wrote it, but the campiness and the satire, it comes through from the very beginning. It's over the top. These are, you don't need to like these people very much.
Yeah. And I think they are, as you get through the story, and on its surface, you think it's about just giant dudes and giant mechs, killing dinosaurs and then dinosaurs killing them and vice versa, But there are actually individual arcs for a lot of these characters and things that they go through and that they endure. And again, it's all played completely straight. Like nobody at any point thinks any of this is absurd, And I'm a huge fan.
I love it in the board meeting when he's like, yeah, we want to travel back in time. And they go, when can we start?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Total Recall. And RoboCop left a big impression on me when I was younger. Those are both Verhoeven films. And those films are both the same way, right? Like part of Verhoeven's technique is that regardless of how insane everybody's acting, nobody acts like anything happening around them is insane at all,
Right.
And so that's really kind of a voice that we tried to capture here, is not to play anything for laugh lines or for humor, but to really have the absurdity be completely truthful and honest within the context of the story, and to have all the characters behaving in that way. And there is a lot of humor in the story, and so much of that is communicated by Juan and what he's able to do with facial expressions and the way he handles the violence and, sort of the muscular action of the story and things.
I love this. Our first look at this beautiful paradise, a wonderland of the.
That's like the happy Jurassic Park moment, except then we come in and we obliterate all these dinosaurs.
Oh, wait, and then not for long.
Yeah, that's where it gets ugly.
Let's get a little. Let's get real with Rip. We love it. So if you like hyper violence, and who doesn't, I would say, of the movies, the Verhoeven movies, I loved every one of them that you mentioned, but there's a special place in my heart for Starship Troopers.
Yeah, so see the bottom panel of this page right here? Yeah. If you zoom in on that, like Juan, the way he draws these dinosaurs with these big bug eyes, like, what is happening? Like, a minute ago, I was just eating some grass, and now, like, there's just bullets everywhere. Like, that's what I mean about the humor that he's able to bring to the story. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's those little touches, and it's
slightly over the top. It's a little campy. It's not cartoony, but it's cartoonish.
It would be so easy for it to go too far, and the whole thing would sort of break under its own weight, But he straddles the line with perfection. And I worked with him for 2 issues at Valiant on Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. And I've been trying to work with him again throughout my career since that day. So when Bad Idea told me he was going to be drawing this story, I was ecstatic, And
I was really only aware of him from, I think he did some work at Avatar.
He did, I think, yeah. He did a lot of stuff at Valiant. I'm not familiar with his Avatar stuff, but he did do some stuff at Valiant. And I was just so thrilled to have him on the book. And I wrote this book specifically for him, Like, there are moments of, like, humor that I knew he'd be able to draw in a way where the humor wasn't like a laugh track, and it would land the way we wanted to, and the absurdist, honest way that everybody believes in what they're doing.
Gary Frank is a guy who can do that sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
It's highly competent storytelling, amazing action and violence. I think the color palette on this stuff is really fun to look at.
Yeah, Andrew Dahlhaus is the colorist. He's worked with Juan in the past. I actually worked with him on The Flash some when I did my Flash run at DC. He's a great guy and an amazing colorist. So yeah, and then we've got Dave Sharp on letters. Dave Sharp is somebody that I worked with a lot at Valiant, and I want to say he lettered my entire run of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, which is 51 issues. I think he lettered every single issue of that as well.
Let's get. Yeah, nice kerning, dude. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was cool, and then I go, but I'm getting to the end, I'm getting on, and I'm going like, this is like, it's kind of bordering on like fantasy animal murdering porn at one point. It's like, it's so gruesome. These poor, helpless dinosaurs finally are, their objective is achieved, and the comet is deflected. And who would think that going into the past and changing something like that might have ramifications on the present day?
It was a foolproof plan. I don't know how it could possibly go wrong.
And so it turns out, while they did delay the comet hitting the Earth, it just gave the dinosaurs time to evolve and get a little bit more, even more super powerful. They're like super dinosaurs now, right?
Yeah, so the plan was that they were going to divert the comet, send it once more around the sun, so it comes back, 20 million years later, 50 million years later, whatever. And all the dinosaurs will have died, but the comet would still hit, and they'd be gone. But they got the math wrong, so the comet never came back around and hit Earth, and they come back to the present, and the dinosaurs are not only still there, but they've had another 60 million years to evolve. And so they're like apex dinosaurs. And so if you love dinosaurs, and I'll tell you, when we put out some of these early images and started talking about the book, there are a lot of dinosaur fans out there that are like, why'd you have to kill so many dinosaurs? And like, they're really kind of bothered by it. But issue 2.
But they get their comeuppance, right? Because just like Starship Troopers, the dinosaurs are the heroes, right? The monsters are the heroes of this thing, not the villains. We love
it. So we set all that up in issue 1, because issue 2 is when the dinosaurs get their say in the matter, So yeah. Are we on?
And these are preview pages of issue number 2 that we're looking at. We don't want to spoil too much, but I think, if you're just a fan of over the top sci-fi action, if you're a lover of something like, I don't know, 2000 AD, right?
So what we're looking at right here, if you want to zoom in on some of this.
Oh yeah.
That's Juan's pencils.
Uh-huh.
There is no inker. He just does super duper tight pencils.
Let me get in on this thing.
Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah.
And you're saying at like smaller than comic size?
Yes.
So this stuff is actually enlarged to comic book size?
I guess so. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, no, because it's like an 8
or it's just very close to the actual size.
Yeah, it's like an 8x10 sheet of paper, so it's probably reduced a little bit, right? But yeah, his original. I bought one of his originals when we worked on Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. I'm actually packing up my office right now because we're moving in about a month. So everything is in boxes. Otherwise, I would go get it for you and be like, here's his original. And it's just a little bit bigger than an actual comic book page. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, I don't know, you ever read Richard Delgado's Age of Reptiles?
I have not, no.
Oh, man, you want to read some dinosaur comics, pal. Go pick those ones up from Dark Horse. Amazing. It's like a nature documentary, no words. It's just dinosaurs in the dinosaur age, but it's pure storytelling. Mm-hmm. And this guy, I'm not going to knock Rip's dinosaurs, but Delgado, amazing.
Do you have the cover for, I don't know if they gave you the cover to issue 2.
It's not in the PDF.
Yeah, Louis LaRose is doing the covers for the series.
Okay.
And he's like a dinosaur artist. Like he does comic book storytelling as well, but he does like fine arts dinosaur images. And so like,
beautiful.
These are all real species as they're scientifically believed to have appeared. And when he sent the cover in, he was like, not only are these all dinosaur species, but he was like, these are all species that actually would have lived in Texas at the time that they went back and diverted the comet or whatever. Like,
I don't know who needs that much realism, but God bless him, right?
Yeah.
God bless him.
The cover to issue 2 is one of the best comic book covers I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
Oh man,
I
this
can't
stuff
wait for people to see it. Yeah.
stuff's getting me excited, Robert. It's getting me a little heated up. I'm a little bit worried what's going on here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and it's time for some Q&A.
Yeah.
We've got a few comments. We've got a few people in the Q&A. Let's see. Oh man, Mike Coonrad. Oh, he already saw this, but your run on Exo Man of War was amazing.
That's less than a question. That's more of a definitive statement, and I happen to agree with it. So we've got common ground there, Mike. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, okay, man. Randy Siplin asks, he says, tankers look sweet. He also asks some other stuff that, just come on, Randy, give me a break, all right? Who was your favorite, who's your favorite all-time artist to have worked with? Can you name that? Are you willing to do that on Comic Book News?
No, I'm not going to say that. You know, I've had great relationships with so many of the artists I've worked with. Hitch, we've obviously talked about at length. Juan, we've talked about at length. Fernando Passerine, I've worked with him on a few different projects. He's an amazing artist. I'd love to work with him again. Rafa Sandoval, I worked with him on EXO, and also Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps. I'd love to work with him again. There's just so many. Carrie Norb was great. You know, so many that I've enjoyed working with. So I don't want to pick favorites, you know.
Let's see. Rob mentioned RoboCop. Rip did. That's the book where I remember he did Frank Miller's RoboCop.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I wasn't aware
of
that.
Love you too, Randy. We love you too, Randy. And you know, Randy is right. We seem to have some kind of Marty McFly effect. I think that myself coming from the future, I'm starting to feel cold. I'm starting to feel like I need to warm myself up a little bit. I need to be ready for the closing credits, which are coming up any minute now. Okay. Oh yeah. Superpower, the invisible hand of the comics market. Yeah, you got my gag. You figured out my gag. Fan Friction 1. Tell us again where we're going to get Bad Idea. Okay, and I got to ask, for my retailer pals and everybody else, I want to get the Bad Idea people in here. I want to get Adam in here to talk. What do you know about the whole kerfuffle here? So like they said, look, we're only going to print X number. We're never going to make a variant cover. We're not going to print trade paperbacks. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that strategy? Why? What is this? What's the reasoning in your? Why do you think that strategy makes sense?
I think what they want to do, and I'm speaking on my opinion of the matter. I'm not, you know, their own marketing people might have a different reason for it, but for me, I think they want people to be in the store on Wednesday. They want people to be excited. They want it to be like every Wednesday that a Bad Idea book comes out. And today, as we're live, is Bad Idea Day because it's their first book, ENIAC #1, came out today, right? And so every time a new issue comes out, they want it to be an event. They want you to go to your store. They want you to be excited about it. I get that. It's okay if it's not for you. It's okay if you know, you don't like that approach. It's okay if you only like trades. It's okay if you like variant covers. You know, they're not saying that those things are bad. They're just saying that for us, what we're doing a Bad Idea is we want you to actually go in and have this comic. We want it to be an event. We want not just the story itself, but the experience of getting the book. That's also an event. You know, if you go into your store and you are the first person to buy an issue of Bad Idea Comics on the day that it comes out, you get a special pin that says, a gold pin, I bought the first copy of this book at, you know, whichever comic book store, Midtown Comics, whatever. And that pin is going to be associated with things later on, maybe that there's prizes or special, you know, things that you're able to get to, special offers, things like that. So there's just a lot of creativity that they're doing. And like that opening trailer that you showed of me doing the video, like, that's a pretty crazy way to promote a comic book. You know what I'm saying? And that all came about by.
Well, now I liked everything that you said. I love the idea of driving Wednesday as an event, getting people into comic book stores, because that helps the whole industry, that helps the stores, that helps everybody.
Sure.
What confused me though was like they said, okay, you can't get this through Diamond, you got to order it direct. Okay, A lot of stores went out and placed orders and took a chance on ENIAC #1, but it's been extremely allocated after orders were placed. And so how does that help? I had a retailer ask me to ask this question. How does that help get more comics into the hands of more people?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I don't know the specifics, but I'm going to try to answer as best I can, right? I think that what happened was the first printings ended up being allocated because they got a lot more orders than they were expecting, honestly, because it's such a non-traditional way of doing this, and nobody's ever done this before, right? So those first printings got allocated, but I believe they printed enough of the actual comic through what they call not a first printing, which is just a second printing with the same cover, and everything's going to be a not a first printing except the first printing. That everybody got the comics that they ordered, they just didn't necessarily get them all as first printings.
I understand that, and that's ruffled a couple of feathers, especially when you say, like, the first person to get this issue, etc., gets it should be easier to get the comics in some retailers' opinions.
And maybe there's just some growing pains that'll get smoothed out as they learn, because like I say, this is a way of doing it that I don't know that anybody else has tried before. I can't tell you from my time working in Top Shelf's warehouse, which is as small press indie as it gets. Like, we were smaller than Fantagraphics, which is already independent press,
Yes.
Like, I don't know who was smaller than us. Maybe High Water Books, if anybody remembers them, It is extremely hard to do the small press thing and to do distribution while you're also doing content and marketing on a small staff of people. So yeah,
totally agree. Not to mention during a pandemic when the printing industry and shipping industry and everything was thrown into huge disarray. Right? That's the one thing where I give, and I know Adam well enough to know that he's not going to do a single thing to purposely try and hurt comic books.
No, Adam comes from retail. I mean, he was a Eisner Award winning retailer, right? So he's all about.
Not to mention a gold medal panelist on Comic Book News, which is really.
And he wears the best shoes in the business. If anybody sees Adam Freeman at a convention, you got to check out the shoes, But so no, he's not going to do anything to hurt retailers. I can't speak to what happened with ENIAC #1. I don't know, right? I just write the books now. But
do you foresee that are steps being taken to make sure that a similar thing does not happen with Tankers #1?
That's my understanding. Yes, that's my understanding. Yep.
Okay, guys. Yep. Okay, Mike Coonrad says, "Hey, give Bad Idea time to work out the kinks. A lot of same people were behind Valiant's return in 2012, and that worked out great for a while, at least."
Well, it worked out great as long as all of them were there, I would say. I don't know. I'm not sure what the status of Valiant is right now. But I think what Mike is saying is that all those, the crew that's a Bad Idea now that wasn't Valiant was such a big driving force behind what made Valiant successful. And on Valiant's launch day, believe me, they were playing, because I was that launch book. X-Men Man of War #1 was the first book that Valiant ever published. I was there. There were a lot of people saying that they didn't know what they were doing, and it was all going to go bad as well. And here we are going on 10 years later, and that version of Valiant is still around, and they've put out a movie and done a ton of things. So,
well, I'm speaking of movies. Anybody, any feelers out there for options on Tankers? Because this is a slam dunk hit.
I guess the thing's got to be out right before that. Right now,
it doesn't. I've heard of these things being optioned well before they're even out. So
I guess we'll see. It comes out April 7th. So if it's anything like Surrogates, the day that Surrogates went on sale was at San Diego Comic-Con in 2005. I was there packing all the books up, setting up the booth for preview night on Wednesday. I ran back to my hotel and got cleaned up because it was like a 10-hour day of working in the convention center with no AC, setting up the table. I came back, and like Wednesday night, one of the first people I talked to was somebody come up to the table asking if the film rights were available to this book called The Surrogates. It was the most surreal experience I've ever seen.
Ship this one to Bruce, okay? And I ship him #1. Just send him a copy. I predict a phone call from Bruce Willis that says, "Hey, Robert, why don't you come on out to the coast? We'll have a few laughs. Come on out. Let's talk."
Hey, more power to them, you know?
Okay. Well, Robert, thank you for taking the time to come in here and promote this book. Thank you to the folks at Bad Idea for making this happen. Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. Stick around if you want. I got to play some closing credits and blah, blah, blah a little bit. But if you want to stick, if you can talk afterwards, I'll be here. If not, I understand.
Thanks for having me on, Dan. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks again, Robert. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, man, Robert Venditti. And thank you for watching, folks. Oh, my gosh, the time stream. You may have seen in the beginning. Go back to the beginning of this video, and you'll see future me that came to visit, and it seems to have unstabilized the whatever time stream or something, but we got to go back in time. I'm going to have to go back and try and go back and warn myself to stop any of this crazy stuff from happening. So while I do that, what are you going to do? You're going to watch the credits. You're going to click like. You're going to click subscribe. You're going to think about who we're going to be seeing next time. Who we're going to talk to next time. Let's take a look. We got this guy coming. Oh, Ed Piskor, Hip Hop Family Tree, WYSIWYG, X-Men Grand Design, and now Fantagraphics Red Room. Ed doesn't do a ton of interviews. He's coming here. We're going to talk. There's not going to be any live chat. Okay? Ed doesn't want that because, dude, he's got a lot of people out there that just only want to give him grief. But if you've got questions to ask of Ed, you can ask him. You can send them to me. And where can you send them to? You can send them to somewhere. You can send them to Dan at danshaheen.com. Or if you've got comics that you want to see reviewed on this channel, where can you send those things? You can send those to the $1 Million Mailbox. P.O. Box 1163, Arcata, California, 95518 in beautiful Arcata, California. I hope that you'll send me your comics. I'll check them out with my pal Larry if I can ever get myself to reconstitute. And we're going to see you and Ed very soon. But when is that going to be? Exactly? I'm not positive exactly when it's going to be, except for the fact, as I look for the closing credits video, except for the fact that it's going to be next time.
I've gone down 2 or 3 times, all for inspection. And you go there, someday you may need it, but you go there, and I went down, I looked at it, and I've been down, let's see, that would be number 2.5, sort of, because I've done different things, but 2.5. But I looked, I was down for a very, very short period of time.